Have you ever noticed how we're surrounded by adults who act like 5-year-olds? 40-year-old men addicted to games, 35-year-old women throwing tantrums when contradicted, professionals running away from responsibilities as if they were monsters under the bed. Carl Jung, the brilliant Swiss psychiatrist, predicted this epidemic decades ago, and his discoveries are even more shocking today. We are witnessing the greatest psychological regression in human history. Millions of physically adult people, but emotionally trapped in childhood, creating a society that functions like a gigantic kindergarten. Jung not only identified this phenomenon, but uncovered the dark mechanisms behind this mass infantilization. What you'll discover in this video will completely change your view of yourself and the world around you. Prepare for a disturbing journey through the labyrinths of the human mind, where social masks fall and the naked truth about our collective immaturity is finally revealed. 1. The Great Escape from Responsibility. Jung understood something terrifying about modern humans. We've become masters at running away from what we need to face. Every day, millions of grown people wake up and spend their energy finding ways to avoid the very things that would make them stronger. This isn't just laziness or bad habits. This is a deep psychological wound that keeps us stuck in childhood forever. Think about your own life for a moment. How many times have you heard someone say, "It's not my job," when something clearly needs to be done? How often do people create elaborate stories about why they can't handle basic adult tasks? Jung saw this pattern everywhere. Adults who had learned to be helpless, who had convinced themselves that someone else should always solve their problems. The human mind has an amazing ability to protect itself from pain. But what happens when this protection becomes a prison? When we avoid responsibility, we're really avoiding the chance to grow. Every time we pass the burden to someone else, we stay small. Every time we make excuses, we choose to remain children in adult bodies. Jung called this the infantile personality, people who never learn to stand on their own 2 feet. They drift through life, expecting others to clean up their mess, to make their decisions, to take care of their needs. They've built their entire identity around being taken care of, and the thought of true independence terrifies them. But here's what's really scary. Our whole society now supports this behavior. We've created systems that reward helplessness and punish self-reliance. We've made it easier to avoid responsibility than to embrace it. We celebrate victims and mock people who take charge of their own lives. The workplace has become a playground where grown people act like children waiting for recess. They complain constantly, but never offer solutions. They blame their boss, their co-workers, the company, the economy, anyone except themselves. They've learned that whining gets attention and avoiding work gets sympathy. Jung noticed that people who run from responsibility have one thing in common: they're absolutely miserable. Deep down, they know they're living a lie. They know they're capable of more, but they're too scared to try, so they stay stuck, getting angrier and more bitter with each passing year. The really tragic part is how this affects relationships. When one person refuses to be responsible, everyone around them has to work twice as hard. Parents end up doing everything for their adult children. Spouses become servants to partners who won't contribute. Friends get tired of always being the one who plans, who pays, who cares. This creates a cycle that spreads like a disease. Children watch their parents avoid responsibility and learn to do the same. They grow up believing that adulthood means finding clever ways to escape obligation rather than embracing it. They see strength as stupidity and dependence as wisdom. Jung believed that taking responsibility was the first step toward becoming a real adult, not just physically mature, but psychologically whole. He understood that we can't grow while we're busy running away. We can't become strong while we're hiding behind excuses. We can't find meaning while we're avoiding the very challenges that would give our lives purpose. The path forward isn't complicated, but it's hard. It means looking at your life honestly and asking where you've been hiding. It means stopping the excuses and starting to act. It means accepting that nobody else is coming to save you, and that this is actually good news. When we finally stop running and start facing our responsibilities, something magical happens. We discover we're stronger than we thought. We find out we're capable of handling whatever life throws at us. We start to feel proud of ourselves instead of ashamed. We become the kind of person others can rely on instead of the kind everyone has to take care of. 2. The addiction to others' approval. There's something heartbreaking about watching grown people twist themselves into knots just to get a smile or a nod from someone else. Jung saw this pattern everywhere in his practice. Adults who had never learned to value themselves, who lived their entire lives seeking validation from others, like hungry children begging for scraps. This isn't just wanting to be liked. This is much deeper and more destructive. It's a complete inability to feel good about yourself without constant confirmation from the outside world. It's living every moment wondering what other people think, adjusting your behavior based on their reactions, measuring your worth by their opinions. The approval-seeking adult has learned to be a chameleon, changing colors depending on who's watching. They become whoever they think others want them to be. With their boss, they're the perfect employee. With their friends, they're the life of the party. With their family, they're the devoted child. But underneath all these masks, there's nobody home. Jung understood that this desperate need for approval comes from a wound that formed very early in life. Somewhere along the way, these people learned that love was conditional. They discovered that being themselves wasn't enough. They had to earn affection by being what others wanted. This lesson gets burned so deep into their psyche that they never question it. The modern world has made this problem 1,000 times worse. Social media has turned approval-seeking into an addiction more powerful than any drug. People spend hours crafting the perfect post, choosing the right filter, writing the clever caption, all for those precious likes and comments that make them feel real for a few minutes. But here's the cruel joke. The more approval you seek, the less you get. People can sense desperation from miles away. They can smell the neediness, the fake enthusiasm, the carefully calculated responses designed to please. And instead of being drawn to it, they're repelled by it. Nobody wants to be around someone who has no center, no core, no authentic self. The approval addict becomes exhausted from constantly performing. They lose track of what they actually think, feel, or want because they've spent so much time focused on what others think, feel, or want. They become strangers to themselves, living lives that feel hollow and meaningless. Relationships become impossible because there's nobody real to connect with. How can you love someone who changes personality depending on what you want to hear? How can you trust someone who agrees with everything you say? How can you respect someone who has no backbone, no personal opinions, no willingness to stand for anything? Jung saw that people stuck in this pattern often develop what he called a false self, a personality built entirely around getting approval. This false self becomes so strong that it completely covers up the real person underneath. Years go by where they never make a single decision based on what they actually want. The workplace becomes a theater where they perform their role as the agreeable employee. They say yes to everything, volunteer for tasks they hate, laugh at jokes that aren't funny, all to maintain their image as the person everyone likes. But promotion goes to people with real opinions and genuine confidence, leaving them frustrated and confused. At home, they become people-pleasers who make everyone else comfortable while ignoring their own needs. They cook the food others want to eat, watch the shows others want to see, go to places others want to visit. Their own preferences become mysteries even to themselves. The really sad part is how this affects their children. Kids learn by watching, and when they see a parent who has no authentic self, who bends and shapes themselves for others' approval, They learn that this is how adults behave. The cycle continues into the next generation. Jung believed that breaking free from approval addiction required something that felt impossible, learning to approve of yourself first. This meant developing an internal compass that didn't depend on external validation. It meant risking disappointment, rejection, even anger from others in order to stay true to yourself. The journey back to authenticity is scary because it means some people won't like the real you. But Jung understood a profound truth. It's better to be disliked for who you are than loved for who you're pretending to be. Real relationships can only happen between real people. And real people have opinions, boundaries, and the courage to be themselves even when it's uncomfortable. By the way, if you're curious to go even deeper and integrate your shadows and light, check out the Sim Method ebook. It's a concise guide that can help you unlock your inner power in just 5 minutes a day. The link is in the first pinned comment below. 3. When anger becomes adult tantrums. Jung witnessed something disturbing in his patients, grown people who had never learned to handle their emotions like adults. Instead of processing anger in healthy ways, they would explode like toddlers who didn't get their favorite toy. These weren't just moments of frustration, these were full-blown emotional meltdowns that would make a 2-year-old proud. Watch any adult having a tantrum and you'll see exactly what Jung was talking about. The red face, the raised voice, the complete inability to think clearly. They stomp around, slam doors, throw things, and say cruel words they can never take back. In that moment, their adult brain shuts down completely and their child brain takes over. The scary part isn't the tantrum itself, it's how normal this has become. We live in a world where grown people think it's acceptable to lose control whenever something doesn't go their way. They've convinced themselves that their feelings justify their behavior, that being upset gives them permission to act like children. Jung understood that healthy adults feel anger just like everyone else, but they don't let it control them. They pause, they breathe, they think about what's really bothering them. They communicate their needs without attacking others. They solve problems instead of creating bigger ones. But the adult child never learned these skills. When they feel angry, they go straight to tantrum mode. They yell at customer service workers over minor problems. They have screaming matches with their partners over dishes in the sink. They send nasty emails to co-workers who disagree with them. They honk their horns and flip off other drivers in traffic. What's really happening is that their emotional development got stuck somewhere around age 5. They never learned that feelings are temporary visitors, not permanent residents. They never discovered that you can feel angry without acting angry. They never developed the emotional muscles needed to handle life's inevitable frustrations. The workplace has become a daycare center for these emotional toddlers. They pout when they don't get the promotion they wanted. They gossip and spread rumors when someone else gets credit. They create drama over the smallest issues and make everyone around them walk on eggshells. At home, they turn their families into hostages. Everyone else has to manage their moods, predict their reactions, and avoid triggering their explosive episodes. Children learn to be afraid of their own parents' emotions. Spouses become exhausted from constantly trying to keep the peace. Jung saw that people who throw adult tantrums are actually revealing their deepest fear, that they're powerless. When something doesn't go their way, they panic and resort to the only tool they know: emotional manipulation through rage. They've learned that if they get angry enough, loud enough, scary enough, people will give them what they want just to make it stop. But this strategy backfires spectacularly. Instead of getting respect, they get fear. Instead of getting love, they get people walking away. Instead of solving problems, they create enemies. They end up more powerless than ever, surrounded by people who either avoid them or secretly resent them. The really tragic part is how these tantrums destroy relationships. You can't have a real conversation with someone who explodes every time they hear something they don't like. You can't trust someone who might turn into a monster without warning. You can't feel safe with someone who uses anger as a weapon. Children who grow up with tantrum-throwing adults learn that this is how conflict gets handled. They copy what they see, thinking that the loudest person wins. They never learn healthy ways to express disagreement or work through problems. The cycle continues into the next generation. Jung believed that breaking this pattern required something most people avoid: taking full responsibility for your emotional reactions. This means admitting that your anger is your problem, not everyone else's. It means learning to feel your feelings without inflicting them on others. It means developing the emotional maturity that should have happened decades ago. The path forward starts with a simple but difficult recognition. You are not your emotions. You are the person who experiences emotions. You get to choose what you do with them. You can feel angry without becoming anger. You can be upset without upsetting everyone around you. Real adults understand that anger is information, not instruction. It tells you something needs attention, but it doesn't tell you to attack, blame, or punish. It's a signal to pause, reflect, and respond thoughtfully instead of reacting blindly. 4. The desperate search for someone to blame. Jung discovered something profound about human nature. When life gets difficult, most people immediately start looking for someone else to blame instead of looking at themselves. This isn't just a bad habit, it's become the defining characteristic of our entire culture. We've created a world full of adult children who believe that everything wrong in their lives is someone else's fault. Listen to people talk and you'll hear it everywhere. Their problems are caused by their boss, their ex, their parents, the government, society, the economy. Anyone and everyone except themselves. They've become experts at pointing fingers and finding excuses, but completely helpless when it comes to taking control of their own lives. This blame game starts early and gets worse with age. Children naturally blame others when things go wrong. It's part of normal development. But healthy adults learn to move beyond this. They start asking better questions like, what can I do differently? And how did I contribute to this situation? The adult child never makes this transition. Jung saw that people who constantly blame others are really trying to protect something, their image of themselves as perfect victims who never make mistakes. Admitting they played a role in their problems would shatter this carefully constructed identity. So they twist reality to maintain the illusion that they're always innocent and everyone else is always wrong. The workplace has become a blame factory. Projects fail and everyone points fingers at everyone else. Nobody wants to admit they didn't do their part, didn't communicate clearly, didn't plan properly. It's always the other department's fault, the previous employee's fault, the customer's fault. Taking responsibility has become career suicide because blame is safer than honesty. Relationships become impossible when one person refuses to accept any responsibility. Every fight becomes about who's wrong instead of how to solve the problem. Every disagreement turns into a court case where evidence is gathered to prove the other person is guilty. Love dies under the weight of constant accusations and defensive reactions. Jung understood that people who blame others are actually revealing their own powerlessness. By making everything someone else's fault, they're saying they have no control over their own lives. They're admitting they're victims who can't influence their circumstances. They're choosing helplessness over empowerment. The internet has made this problem 1,000 times worse. Now people can find entire communities of other blamers who will validate their victim stories. They can spend hours reading about how their problems are caused by their generation, their gender, their background, their circumstances, anything except their own choices. Social media becomes a platform for broadcasting blame. People post long rants about how others have wronged them, looking for sympathy and support for their victim narrative. They collect likes and comments that reinforce their belief that they're innocent and everyone else is terrible. But here's what Jung noticed. People who constantly blame others are deeply miserable. They feel powerless, angry, and hopeless because they've convinced themselves they can't change anything. They're waiting for other people to fix their problems, apologize for their mistakes, or somehow make their lives better. This waiting can last a lifetime. The blame game also destroys personal growth. When everything is someone else's fault, there's no reason to change, improve, or learn. Why work on yourself when the problem is clearly other people? Why develop new skills when your failures are caused by external factors? Why take risks when you can just blame others if things don't work out? Children who grow up in blame-heavy households learn that this is how adults handle problems. They watch their parents constantly pointing fingers and making excuses. They learn that taking responsibility makes you the bad guy, while blaming others makes you the victim who deserves sympathy. Jung believed that breaking free from the blame pattern required something most people find terrifying: radical self-responsibility. This means looking at every problem in your life and asking, what's my part in this? It means admitting that even when others behave badly, you still get to choose your response. This doesn't mean everything is your fault. That's just blame turned inward. It means recognizing that you always have some degree of choice and influence, even in difficult situations. It means focusing on what you can control instead of obsessing over what you can't. The shift from blaming to owning changes everything. Instead of feeling like a victim of circumstances, you start feeling like the author of your own story. Instead of waiting for others to change, you start changing yourself. Instead of collecting evidence of how wrong everyone else is, you start gathering wisdom about how to live better. Real adults understand that blame is a luxury they can't afford. Every minute spent pointing fingers is a minute not spent solving problems. Every breath wasted on accusations is a breath not used for creation. Every thought devoted to how wrong others are is a thought not focused on how to make things right. 5. The magical world of adult children. Jung uncovered something deeply troubling about the modern mind. Millions of adults still believe the world works like a fairy tale. They expect life to be fair, people to be nice, and good things to happen just because they want them to. They live in a fantasy where wishing makes things real, and wanting something badly enough should be enough to get it. This isn't just optimism or positive thinking. This is a complete disconnection from reality. These adult children genuinely believe that life owes them happiness, success, and love without any real effort on their part. They think the universe is like a cosmic vending machine. Put in your desires and get out your dreams. Watch them closely, and you'll see the magical thinking everywhere. They believe they can ignore their health for years and then fix everything with one doctor visit. They think they can avoid studying and still pass the test. They expect to find their soulmate without working on themselves first. They want to get rich without learning any valuable skills. Jung saw that this magical thinking comes from a mind that never fully developed past childhood. Children naturally believe in magic because they don't understand how the world really works. They think their parents are all-powerful, that problems solve themselves, that wanting something makes it happen. Healthy adults learn that reality has rules that can't be wished away. But our culture has made magical thinking worse than ever before. We're surrounded by messages that tell us we can have anything we want if we just believe hard enough. Self-help books promise instant transformation. Social media shows us highlight reels that make success look effortless. We've created a world that feeds the fantasy instead of teaching reality. The workplace is full of magical thinkers who expect promotions without performance, raises without results, and success without sacrifice. They show up late, do the minimum work, and then wonder why they're not advancing. They blame discrimination or politics instead of recognizing that magical thinking doesn't create real outcomes. Relationships become disasters when one person believes in romantic fairy tales. They expect their partner to read their minds, anticipate their needs, and make them happy without any communication or effort from their side. They think love conquers all problems without actually addressing any problems. They wait for their soulmate while ignoring everyone who doesn't match their fantasy. Money becomes a source of constant stress for magical thinkers. They believe they deserve financial abundance without understanding how money actually works. They buy lottery tickets instead of building skills. They go into debt for things they want now instead of saving for things they need later. They expect someone else to rescue them from their financial mistakes. Jung understood that magical thinking is really a defense against the fear of effort. If you can convince yourself that wishing works, you don't have to face the hard truth that getting what you want requires planning, work, patience, and persistence. You don't have to develop discipline or learn difficult skills. You can stay comfortable in your fantasies. Health becomes a casualty of magical thinking. People abuse their bodies for decades and then expect miracle cures when problems appear. They want to lose weight without changing their eating habits. They want to feel energetic without exercising. They want to avoid aging without taking care of themselves. They treat their bodies like they have magical healing powers. The internet has become a breeding ground for adult magical thinking. People spend hours reading about the law of attraction, manifestation techniques, and positive visualization, while their actual lives fall apart. They think sharing inspirational quotes is the same as taking action. They believe posting goals on social media makes them more likely to achieve them. Jung noticed that magical thinkers often become bitter and angry when reality doesn't cooperate with their fantasies. They feel cheated by life when their wishes don't come true. They blame the world for being unfair instead of adjusting their expectations to match how things actually work. Children who grow up around magical thinkers never learn the connection between cause and effect. They watch adults expect good things without doing good work. They learn that complaining about problems is more common than solving them. They develop the same unrealistic expectations that will frustrate them for the rest of their lives. Breaking free from magical thinking requires something that feels like giving up hope. Accepting that the world has rules you can't change. Gravity works whether you believe in it or not. Math gives the same answers whether you like them or not. Success requires effort, whether that seems fair or not. But Jung saw that this acceptance isn't the death of dreams. It's the birth of real power. When you stop believing in magic, you start learning how things actually work. When you stop expecting miracles, you start creating real results. When you stop waiting for fairy tale endings, you start writing better stories. Real adults understand that the world isn't fair, but it is predictable. Actions have consequences. Effort produces results. Time invested in the right activities creates the outcomes you want. This isn't magic. It's better than magic because it actually works. 6. The prison of eternal comfort. Jung observed something that would shock most people today. Many adults have become addicted to comfort in a way that's slowly destroying their souls. They've created lives so safe, so predictable, so free from challenge that they've stopped growing entirely. They're living in a prison made of soft pillows and warm blankets, and they don't even realize they're trapped. This isn't about having nice things or enjoying life's pleasures. This is about people who have made avoiding discomfort their primary goal. They won't take risks because risks might lead to failure. They won't try new things because new things might be difficult. They won't face their problems because problems cause stress. They've chosen the slow death of eternal safety over the vibrant life that comes from facing challenges. Look around, and you'll see these comfort prisoners everywhere. They stay in jobs they hate because looking for new work is scary. They remain in relationships that have died because being alone feels uncomfortable. They live in the same town, eat the same food, talk to the same people, and follow the same routine year after year because change requires effort. Jung understood that comfort becomes dangerous when it stops being a reward for hard work and starts being a substitute for living. When people spend more time planning their next vacation than building their character, when they know more about entertainment than about themselves, when they're more concerned with being comfortable than being alive, they've crossed a line that's hard to come back from. The modern world has made comfort addiction easier than ever before. We have devices that solve every minor inconvenience. We have services that deliver everything to our door. We have entertainment available 24 hours a day. We never have to be bored, uncomfortable, or challenged unless we choose to be. And most people choose not to be. Technology has created a generation of adults who can't handle even minor discomfort. They need constant stimulation, immediate answers, and instant gratification. Waiting 5 minutes feels like torture. Being alone with their thoughts creates anxiety. Facing a problem without Google feels impossible. They've lost the ability to sit with difficulty and work through it. Jung saw that people trapped in comfort zones become weak in ways that go beyond physical weakness. Their minds become soft because they never have to think hard about anything. Their emotions become fragile because they avoid anything that might upset them. Their spirits become small because they never test themselves against real challenges. Relationships suffer when one person is addicted to comfort. They won't have difficult conversations because conflict is uncomfortable. They won't work through problems because that requires effort. They won't grow or change because growth involves temporary pain. They expect their partner to manage their emotions and protect them from anything unpleasant. The workplace becomes a place where comfort addicts do the absolute minimum required to avoid getting fired. They won't volunteer for challenging projects because those might involve stress. They won't learn new skills because that takes time and energy. They won't speak up about problems because that might create conflict. They coast through their careers, wondering why nothing exciting ever happens. Jung noticed that comfort addicts often develop a deep sense of emptiness and meaninglessness. Life feels boring because they've removed all the elements that make life interesting: risk, challenge, growth, and discovery. They feel depressed without understanding that depression often comes from living too small a life. Children who grow up in comfort-obsessed families never learn that some discomfort is good for you. They watch their parents avoid every challenge and learn that struggle is something to escape rather than embrace. They develop the same fear of difficulty that will limit them throughout their lives. The really tragic part is how comfort addiction prevents people from discovering what they're truly capable of. Every great achievement in human history came from someone who was willing to be uncomfortable, to face uncertainty, to risk failure. The comfort addict will never know their real strength because they never test it. Breaking free from the comfort prison requires something that feels counterintuitive, deliberately choosing discomfort. This means saying yes to opportunities that scare you. It means having conversations you've been avoiding. It means trying things you might fail at. It means trading temporary safety for long-term growth. Jung believed that real happiness doesn't come from avoiding pain. It comes from facing challenges and discovering you can handle more than you thought. Every time you choose growth over comfort, you expand your sense of what's possible. Every time you do something difficult, you prove to yourself that you're stronger than your fears. Real adults understand that comfort is like medicine, helpful in small doses, but dangerous when it becomes a way of life. They use comfort to recover from challenges, not to avoid them. They seek security so they can take bigger risks, not so they can take no risks at all. They build safe spaces so they can venture into unsafe territory and return home stronger. The path out of the comfort prison isn't about becoming reckless or seeking pain for its own sake. It's about remembering that you were built for more than just survival. You were made to grow, to explore, to create, to become more than you are today. And that requires leaving the safety of your cell and stepping into the unknown territory where real life happens. Jung once wrote that the greatest tragedy of human existence isn't death, poverty, or even loneliness. It's the sight of a fully grown person who has never truly lived. As you look around today, you're surrounded by walking corpses who breathe, eat, and sleep, but who stopped growing decades ago. They've traded their souls for safety, their potential for predictability, their authentic selves for the approval of strangers. The most disturbing truth Jung ever discovered wasn't about mental illness or human darkness. It was that most people choose to remain children because growing up requires facing the terrifying reality that you are entirely responsible for who you become. The question that should haunt you tonight isn't whether you're one of these adult children, but whether you have the courage to stop being one. Because every day you postpone your psychological growth, every moment you choose comfort over challenge, every time you blame others instead of looking within, you're not just wasting time, you're murdering the person you could have been.